My gosh, this post absolutely blew up. And honestly, I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for people to be reminded that certain individuals aren't like the utmost authority when it comes to Japanese culture or anime or anything like that. To always question everything you hear and be careful what you repeat. And this is something I tell people all the time for myself as well. Like if I say something that's like, what? Go check it out. Go look it up yourself. Don't take me as being like the utmost authority on things ever. But yes, what actually happened? Yes, during a podcast episode of Trash Taste Podcast, at some point the host on there, Gigic, he questions, why is there so much anime that takes place in school settings? Something we all ask ourselves, right? Why is there so much anime? Why do they keep going there? Like even when they open up like, Seraph of the End where it's like crazy, it just goes straight to school. It's like they can't stay out of school. Well, the response that Joey gives on the podcast is that it's a cultural thing. That because in Japan, when they're in high school, they love their time in high school. They love it. It's so much fun. It's like ultimate freedom. They have so much, they're just enjoying their time. And then they graduate, then they go off to the workforce, and then life is hell. And they just want to so badly get back to their school life. So, school setting anime is sort of an escapism to get back to that time. Well, yeah, it's something I've heard myself, and I think I've even repeated myself. So this is like not necessarily me bashing on Trash Taste or Joey. I think this is one of those kind of eye-opening experiences to realize that, you keep hearing something, don't just assume that it's true. Always question everything. But let's get into exactly what this post that blew up is really saying. Because, of course, there's this post that was made, they clipped this particular part, and they've basically refuted it. They said it's incorrect. And now, yes, I would typically go, okay, this poster, just because they say something doesn't mean they're, factual. But they are a poster from Japan, and I've seen several, I've gone through probably maybe 30 different posts that are responding to this, and they've all kind of agreed with this. So I kind of think this is a good perspective to kind of take in mind to this whole idea of why is there so much school anime? Well, let's actually get into the post. They say a famous YouTuber in America explains the reason for the prevalence of high school and Japanese anime like this. Now, correction here, this is a break in the translation. They are actually saying that they are a YouTuber that's popular in America, not that Joey is an American YouTuber. So keep that in mind. Don't get stuck on that. They say the bullet points for Joey's comments here is, for Japanese people, high school is the most shining period of their lives. Once they became working adults, it turns into hell. So they reminisce about high school days. Japanese people don't want to see the dark reality of their own society. I think this is sort of true, what it's kind of extrapolating or taking from what Joey is saying, but it is sort of very condensed here. But I think the both sides is true, right? Because Joey is being very general about the things. He does say some Japanese people find their high school days great. He doesn't say all, but again, this is what they're going to draw from what Joey is saying. And again, he's sort of kind of condensing it here in this post. But he says, but I think this is a pretty sloppy take on Japan. First off, people who still love school anime, even as adults, couldn't possibly have had fun high school days. If anything, the one who truly enjoy high school probably don't cling so strongly to school anime even after they grow up. I can see that. Why would you want to see somebody else's reality? You had an enjoyable time. Why would you want to live through somebody else? In reality, plenty of people would say that their school days were hell because human relationships and their range of activities were narrow, with no escape. This is a very, very good thing to keep in mind, that for a lot of people, school wasn't freedom. For a lot of people, that wasn't the case. They probably had very strict parents. You go to school, you get your homework, you come home, you do your studies, you go to bed, you can't go out at night, you have no, money to spend, you don't have any sort of freedoms. You are under the control of your parents and the school authorities or whatever. You don't have ultimate freedoms. Plus, human relationships. The fact you go to school and then you're being bullied. Why would you want to relive high school when you were bullied? That's not something you want to experience. And I think that's sort of what they get into with that comments that were made on Trash Taste, is getting this idea of like, the fun, informative days, and Western school shows are like all about bullying and stuff like that and bad experiences. Like there's school anime that are very Takabe's Original Sin. There's a lot of school anime that aren't very happy too. The poster goes on, plus Japanese people don't just watch anime. This is a very, very good point here. Keep in mind this. They don't just watch anime. Dramas and movies dealing with working life, poverty, family issues, crime, healthcare, and politics are normally popular too. 100% of everything in this post, this is the biggest key part right here. That if you look at statistics and whatnot, I think the statistics that I seen was like 70% of Japanese people have watched anime. And I would argue, based on like ratings that I typically see every single season, that's probably, Crayon Shin-chan and those types of shows, those family shows that people watch on a regular basis. That's not like what we call anime over here, which is like, your Re:Zeros and stuff like that, things that you see on any chart. This is the stuff that's way down at the bottom that are more family-related stuff that most people that are anime fans don't even watch. Most fans over here, they're watching the shonens, they're watching, the big, isekai series and whatnot. In Japan, most people, they're watching live action dramas and movies and stuff like that that are more adult oriented. They're talking about, actual issues of life. So no, just because there's a lot of anime that seem like escapism doesn't mean that we're escaping reality. We're watching plenty of stuff that reminds us of reality. We're watching the news, and the news is telling us what's happening. We're doing all this other stuff. Don't, in a Western mindset, look at any chart or some sort of chart of seasonal anime and assume all Japan is watching that this is some sort of like reality of Japan. Like if you look at, any chart, that is what they're thinking constantly. No, those are just what's being adapted by studios to sell to, in a lot of cases, a shonen audience, young boys, youth, that kind of stuff. So again, don't take what you see on any chart and charts and attribute that to the entire Japanese society. They're watching crimes. They're like us. Wow, shocker, right? They're watching NCIS or something like that at the end of the day. The explanation of Japanese people escape into anime because they don't want to face dark realities doesn't explain Japan at all. Manga's the same way. Say that after watching, I think the title here is Usujimi the Loan Shark. Too many overseas anime fans talk about Japan like it's a country made solely of shonen anime. That's an unfortunate reality there, because I think the perspective that you get is that because so much of anime that comes out every season, when you're covering anime, if in this case you're a content creator that covers anime, you're going to get this perspective that because there's a lot of shonen-focused shows, which again, shonen is a demographic for young boys, because you're seeing a lot of anime that is being adapted from source material that is mainly focused on that, you get the assumption that that is what Japan themselves want. But no, that's what they want the children to buy. That's the key thing there. But the reality is, and this is a lot what people have kind of pointed out here, when you look outside of adaptations to live actions and manga and light novels, a lot of things are covering more adult stories. They just don't get adapted because they're not really trying to sell that to adults. Adults already have their live action stuff they're watching. So again, there's different perspectives here. Not all of it's going to be true, and not all of it's going to be 100% everybody, but again, different perspectives here. And even when they sell themselves as living in Japan, there are people who with hardly any connection to Japanese society, just living within the foreigner community, like these three people in this video. That is a really, critical statement there. I don't know if it's true. Living in Japan and understanding Japanese society are two different things, right? Don't go thinking a few anime and your own experiences let you explain the values of 100 million people. It's a really harsh way to end this post, but I honestly think it's kind of true. I don't know about Joey and all them, their actual circumstances. I don't watch Trash Taste. I don't know their living condition. I don't know what they are outside of the cameras. But I do know that I have observed a lot of content creators in Japan that moved to Japan that are sort of like insulated. They're like in these little bubbles that are outside of like Japanese society. Like he puts it, foreigner communities. They're not actually growing up and living in Japanese schools. They're not, living in a Japanese community. They're not raising kids in a Japanese setting and whatnot. They're just kind of, again, they're in these little communities. They move over there and they get in this little group of people that are English speakers and they hide away in there. So I think that's what they're kind of saying here, or at least the assumption they're making here. But anyways, getting back to the root of this concept here, which is the statement made about school anime. Again, I don't think this person's like the utmost authority on Japanese culture, but I will take his perspective. And again, many of the replies that were given to this that are from Japanese users, much more than Joey and the folks on Trash Taste. Because again, I kind of agree with this idea of being potentially, insulated in the fact that they probably didn't go to Japanese school. I'm pretty sure they didn't go to Japanese schools. But this post kind of said why they don't think Joey's right. So the question is what is right? Why is there so much school anime? I don't think it's really like a super complicated subject here that I don't want to get super deep into, but I think the consensus that has come to with a lot of the posts that reply to this is generally the fact that school anime is just a very easy setting to build off of. For one case, all writers have been to school at some point, so they understand how school works. So there's not like a difficulty in really kind of creating your own concepts. It's not like if you do a fantasy setting type of thing where you have to create an entire world. You have to create the laws of the world, the gods of the world, the laws of reality, everything, the society, the culture, medicine, everything. They have to manifest all that stuff. Whereas if you make it in a school setting, you know it. Plus, people that see it, they immediately recognize it. They see a school uniform on the cover and they go, oh, school, I've been there. I understand what it's going to start at. You don't have to build up to anything. You don't have to do any sort of setup or anything like that. Additionally, yes, like they're kind of pointing out here, and it was kind of that jab that was made at some point, a lot of people are saying it's mainly because a lot of what is being adapted is shonen. And shonen is, again, geared towards young boys. And what's the best way to appeal to young boys that doesn't feel foreign to them? Put it in a school setting. It's immediately easily recognizable. They pick it up, they relate to the character that's in the story, and they immediately start into the story. That's why you're seeing a lot of that. And yes, I'm not going to say that it's not going to be anybody that likes school anime and that some anime is not made in school settings because escapism. Yes, there's plenty of people in Japan. There's going to be people in any culture that is seeking, anime, TV shows, video games for escapism. It's not like Joey's saying there is 100% false. It's just, I think, again, this is sort of a reality check for people that you can't sort of just put everybody into a bubble and assume that that's the case for everybody. That probably a majority of the people are not necessarily watching school anime. They're watching TV dramas. They're watching crime dramas and whatnot on television, live actions and whatnot. Just because there's an anime made of a certain setting doesn't mean like all of Japan is watching anime of that type. It's just that, again, they're trying to get a demographic, and that demographic likes school settings. Anyways, that's my take on this whole situation. Again, not necessarily to kind of dogpile here on trash taste, because it's not really a big deal. Honestly, not a big deal. But it's a reminder for people to be careful what you repeat, that certain people aren't like the utmost authority just because they live in Japan. Again, I do agree there's sort of a foreigner community concept that happens there that sort of does kind of draw them out of it. But to speak on people, growing up, living in schools in Japan and stuff like that, and whether or not they'd want to sort of relive that is a good question mark. It's always good to question a lot of things. And I, again, tell a lot of people to question whatever I say. There's one thing that I kept hearing back in the day that really bugged me. And again, it's sort of a similar thing to this, is I kept hearing people say that, Japan is behind the times when it comes to technology because they have fax machines. And I hated hearing that because I worked for places that had fax machines and they had a lot of companies that were placing orders via fax machines. And so whenever I heard this, I'm like, you guys are stupid. Americans use fax machines too. Stop acting like just because you've seen a fax machine inside of an office in Japan that you suddenly know the culture is dumb and not technologically advanced. Like, it sounds like you're speaking down to them. But again, people hear that and they keep repeating it because it sounds interesting. And again, this is one of those cases where you hear this and you think it sounds interesting and you repeat it. But again, it's a reminder to always question everything you hear. And again, be careful what you repeat. But anyways, that's my thoughts on this whole situation. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as always. Until next time, take care.